story I want to read is Why I Wear a Plastic Dinosaur. Now all the stories in my book were rewritten with permission by the original authors over 20 years ago. So this story is rewritten with permission by Dan Schaeffer. So Dan wrote, Why I Wear a Plastic Dinosaur. Why would a leader of the community, a respected family man, shamelessly walk around with a plastic dinosaur attached to his suit? The setup to this question occurred one day as I was pulling out of my driveway. I was in a hurry to run an errand. I spied my son running toward me with his tiny hand outstretched. He smiled, his tender young eyes glowing with excitement. I've got a present for you, Daddy. Really, I said, feigning interest, frustrated at the delay and hoping he would hurry up. Then he slowly opened his fingers to reveal the 5-year-old's treasure. I found them for you, Daddy. What lay in those small hands was a white marble, an old and bent marble race car, a broken rubber band, and several other items I can't recall. How I wish now that I would remember those little boy treasures. Take them, Daddy, they're for you, he gushed with pride. I can't right now. I've got to go somewhere. Why don't you put them on top of the freezer in the garage for me? So his smile fell, but he obediently started walking into the garage as I drove off. From the moment I started down the street, I felt remorse. I made a mental note that when I returned, I would accept the gift with more graciousness and gratitude. When I returned, I found him. Hey, son, where are those neat toys you had for me? His expression was bland. Well, I didn't think you wanted them, so I gave them to Adam. Adam is a little boy who lives down the street, and I could picture him accepting these treasures with a great deal more gratitude and excitement than I had. His decision hurt, but I deserved it. Not simply because it highlighted my thoughtless reaction to his gesture, but because it triggered memories of another little boy I remembered. Childhood hurt. It was his older sister's birthday, and the boy had been given $2 to buy something at the 5 and dime store. He toured the department store repeatedly without success. It had to be very special. He finally spied it sitting on a shelf, fairly shouting for attention. A beautiful plastic bubblegum machine filled with brightly colored, chewy treasures. He wanted to show it to her almost as soon as he brought it home, but valiantly resisted the urge. Later, at the birthday, attended by all of her young friends, she began to open her new gifts. With every new gift, she squealed with delight. And with each squeal, a little boy felt more apprehensive. These girls were from the wealthier families that could afford to spend far more than $2. Their gifts were expensive and shiny and talked about, and they were pretty. His little package grew increasingly small and more insignificant. Yet he managed to remain eager to see her eyes sparkle as she opened his gift. After all, she hadn't received anything that she could eat or collect pennies with. She finally opened his gift, and he immediately saw her momentary disappointment. She was slightly embarrassed at it. Suddenly, the beautiful bubblegum machine looked like the plastic cheap toy it was. To maintain her standing among her peers, she couldn't acknowledge the gift with too much enthusiasm. There was momentary silence as she deliberated her response. Then she smiled knowingly at her friends and turned to her brother with a safely patronizing tone and said, "Thank you. It's just what I wanted." Let me turn this light on. Several girls tried unsuccessfully to contain their giggles. She quickly returned to her next game, and the little boy looked away, hurt and confused. The toy that had seemed so beautiful and wondrous in the five and dime store now seemed small and cheap. There's a picture of my son when I wrote this over 20 years ago. He slowly picked it up, walked out to the back porch, and began to cry. The cheap little Fiat didn't belong to those expensive ones. It merely was an embarrassment. The laughing and celebrating continued inside, which only increased his pain. Soon his mother appeared and asked why he was crying. He explained as best he could between the muffled sobs. She listened silently, then returned inside. In a few moments, his sister appeared alone. He could tell by her expression that she had been sent, but her genuine remorse reminded him that she hadn't intended to be mean or hurtful. She was only 8 years old and unaccustomed to the task of balancing the difficult demands of people's feelings and queen for a day euphoria. She explained kindly in her grown-up 8-year-old words that she really didn't like the bubblegum toy very much. He said he understood, and he did. She was just being nice. Now it had come full circle. A new generation was being faced with the same choice, except this new generation was mine. This little fellow would decide for himself whether it really is the thought that counts or my response that would play a large part of the decision. The ultimate gift. So we are repeatedly told growing up that the price of a gift isn't important, that it's the thought that counts. But that can be hard to believe when Daddy gushes over an expensive new toy, but ignores a primitive token of love painstakingly created with the tiny hands and huge hearts that can be far more deeply care about him than the hands that assembled that expensive new bike or CD player. Which all leads to the daunting question I had to face that Christmas, the Christmas that my children were given money to buy presents at their school, called Mistletoe Mall. Mistletoe Mall is the 6th grade holiday emporium of unique items, what the stores couldn't carry if you asked them to. However, all these gifts were designed for a child's budget, and they love it. They had bought my presents and were trying very hard to keep from telling me what I would be receiving, especially my son. He would tease me with my gift, which lay creatively wrapped under the tree. But not a day went by that he didn't make me guess what it might be. On Christmas morning, very early, it was thrust at me, the first thing, by my excitement and impatient son, who insisted that I open it first. He was giddy with excitement and sure I would never receive a gift of this caliber again. I excitedly opened the package and looked inside. There it was, truly the most beautiful present I had ever received. But was no longer looking at it through the 35-year-old eyes, jaded by promises of the newest technology and faster, easier, more economical. Instead, I once again looked at it through the eyes of a 5-year-old. It was a several-inch long green plastic dinosaur, Tyrannosaurus Rex variety, but my son quickly pointed out its feature. Its front claws were also clips so that you could, as he guessed it, wear it all the time. I'll never forget his eyes as I looked at him Christmas morning. They were filled with expectation, hopefulness, and love, the kind found only in very young eyes. History was repeating itself. That small, blonde-haired, blue-eyed face was asking me the same question I had asked years ago. Is it really the thought that counts? I thought of how he must have agonized in the Mistletoe Mall to find a jewel among all the assorted paraphernalia that would best communicate his 5-year-old feeling of love to his daddy. Okay, you with me, Seal? I answered his question with the only 5-year-old way, and only a 5-year-old would understand. I immediately put it on and raved cool, how cool it was, and confirmed, yes, he was right. I did love it. For the next several weeks, I went literally everywhere with that plastic dinosaur cropped to my lapel. Strangely, no one seemed to notice, especially when I was in the presence of my son. No one, that is, except him. It has occurred to me that the expression on his face, on the face of that young children giving gifts of heart, especially at Christmas, is dramatically different than that of the adults trying to buy love with expensive CDs or jewelry. Last Christmas, 2 children from our neighborhood presented our children with homemade paper Christmas stockings, weighted down with treasure and held together by thousands of staples. Inside were odd pieces of Christmas candy and favorite toys of old and loved ones' figurines. The children are from broken homes who don't have much money, but you could tell from their beaming faces that the extra helpings of love and thought that had been stapled into those childlike gifts were like gold and frankincense and myrrh. When does the thought stop counting? It is a question I've asked myself time and time again. I guess it stops counting the moment the reward of the most precious acts we perform for each other are reduced to their strictly commercial value. The raw commercial values of my son's presents wouldn't amount to pennies, but I guarantee you that J. Paul Getty never had enough money to make me part with them. So the next time you see someone wearing a crude paper tie or a cool 5-cent removable caterpillar tattoo that doesn't quite fit the mold of respectable adult decor, don't bother feeling sorry for them. If you tell them they look stupid, they'll just smile and say, maybe, but I've got a 5-year-old who thinks I'm the best thing since peanut butter. And there isn't any money in the United States Treasury that will make me take it off. And that's why I wear a plastic dinosaur. So Dan Schaeffer, thank you for your story over 2 decades ago. May it still encourage parents today. God bless you all.